House rules, Sammy. Driver picks the music. Shotgun shuts his cake hole.
Hi BookTube. I am here with another video in my Supernatural Books series, and this time I'm going to be recommending books based on specific episodes. So I just chose one random episode for each season. So what I did is I went through each season and just thought of any books that I could link with the episodes, or if an episode triggered a certain book recommendation in my mind. So they aren't the best episodes from each season, they aren't like the most memorable episodes from each season, but it's one episode from each season. Yeah, so let's just get into it. Season 1, we're going with episode 8, Bugs. This is notoriously known as the worst episode in Supernatural. I don't think it is. I thought it was entertaining. That's all I ask for from entertainment, you know, is to be entertained. So yeah, this is an episode where Sam and Dean are going to this new development and the bugs start attacking people. So an easy out book recommendation for this episode would be Charlotte's Web, but we're not going to go with that one. I'm actually going to go with Perdido Street Station for two reasons. So Perdido Street Station is about this really kind of cool world, different species interacting, and one of the reasons I want to recommend it is because it was really quite interesting in the first bit, and then it kind of it changed. It didn't feel like the rest of the book. The last fifth of sixth of the book felt like a totally different story. The beautiful writing had changed. The whole plot had changed. It was very kind of disappointing to me ultimately. But so that's kind of reflective in the Bugs being one of the worst episodes as well. But also one of the characters in Perdido Street Station is a Khepri, which is a humanoid bug species, so there's also that connection there. So for season 2, we're going with episode 15, Tall Tales. The boys are investigating these kind of urban legend tall tale type deaths happening at a campus, and they discover the tricksters behind it. So this is the first appearance of the trickster. So I'm going to recommend, it seems obvious, but Son of a Trickster. It's a series, and it's a different version of the trickster. A kind of different spin on it is the Native American trickster character. And so that's what this book series is about. And it's about the trickster. The character, or the idea of the trickster in this book so far, is that he is neither good nor bad, kind of like Gabriel is. You know, it's kind of just his role.
I'd also like to mention that the character of the Son of the Trickster is a very much like almost like a Dean type character, and that he, if you look at him from the outside, he seems like a very, you know, not so nice guy. He's kind of rough around the edges. Not that Dean's stealing drugs, but in the book the character is stealing drugs. And he also has a heart of gold. You know, he's mowing the lawn of his elderly parents. He wants to do better for himself. He's very much about his family as well. So I think this is a good book in general for people who like Supernatural.
Season 3, we're going with episode 11, Mystery Spot. So this episode it's another trickster episode. I guess I really like the trickster. Anyways, so Dean dies over and over and over again, and Sam has to witness it, and of course it's one of those time repeat stories. You have to kind of figure out the key to getting out of the time loop. Yeah, and this is a book I haven't read that I'm going to recommend, but I've heard lots about it. I have it on my shelf. I'm planning on reading it. And that is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, sometimes called also The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, because that is about someone dying over and over again, and someone living the day over and over again trying to solve what's going on, trying to fix the time loop. So yeah, it fits, right? Season 4, we're going with episode 18. The episode's called The Monster at the End of This Book. Basically, Sam and Dean find out that they're book characters, and we meet Chuck for the first time. And Chuck is the one writing the books. And yeah, so it's one of the first meta episodes. And this reminded me of the self-insert author. I mean, I think even Chuck himself says he's inserted himself in the books, obviously, because he's in this episode. So self-insert author for me would be Kurt Vonnegut, and his self-stand-in Kilgore Trout. And he first appears in the book God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, which is about a really rich man who wants to live a humbler life. It's a lot more complicated than that, but it's really good. I highly recommend it. Season 5, we're going with episode 19, Hammer of the Gods. So gods from various religions have gathered around, and they want to address the coming apocalypse triggered by Sam and Dean again. So they're coming around just chatting, having a well, maybe not a good old time, but you know, in a hotel talking around about stuff. And I'm gonna go, there's the obvious choice of American gods, where we have all the different gods kind of, you know, seeing them more as humanized versions of them, which I think Hammer of the Gods does as well, the episode. But instead, I'm going to go with a different spin and go with Death of Vishnu by Manil Suri, and he has, this is the first in a series as well. They're not a continued series, it's more just like an idea series, if that makes sense. They're all books based on different Hindu gods. Anyway, so Death of Vishnu is where it starts, by Manil Suri, because this is a different take on humanizing gods. So we follow this man as he's dying on the steps of this apartment building, and the reactions of the different people around him to his death, and the connection of him as a human to the god Vishnu. I think it's really good. One of my favorite books. Season 6, we're going to go with episode 18, Frontierland. Sam and Dean go back in time. It's a good old episode, Western. They're looking for the Colt. I think it's just a good, you know, fun episode. And Dean, particularly, is having such a good time. And I struggled with this because I haven't read a lot of Westerns. So I'm going to go with one of the Westerns I have read, and that is The Outlander by Gil Adamson. And this is about, it's a different take on Westerns, in that it takes place in Canada, first of all, instead of like, you know, the Wild West. Even though Canada did have a Wild West, it was just a different kind. It wasn't deserts and stuff, it was mountains and snow and trees and all that fun stuff. We're following a female character, and she's on the outside of society, so she is kind of also like maybe one of the characters they would have met in their journey who has been ousted from society for different reasons. So yeah, I'd recommend that one. Season 7, we're going to go with episode 17. It's kind of a funny story. So Sam's walls have been broken down. His memories of the time in the cage are coming flooding in. Lucifer has driven him to the point that he has to be put into a mental hospital. Yeah, so he's there. The obvious one, if you don't, there's two obvious recommendations here. One is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but I'm gonna go with It's Kind of a Funny Story, which is what the episode is called. So the book, It's Kind of a Funny Story, is about a young kid who checks himself into a psychiatric hospital, and it's about the people he meets there, and he has this really interesting thing that he does where he draws maps of like people. It's really cool, interesting thing out there. So I think it's an interesting and a more realistic look at psychiatric hospitals as opposed to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is more of a funner story, kind of I don't want to say it's just fun, but it's not as realistic. I want to say as it's kind of a funny story. Sorry if the angle's changed. My battery died. I had to replace it there. Season 8, we're going with episode 4, Bitten. This is a really interesting take in that Sam and Dean aren't the main focus of the story. We're following some found footage of these university students who are transforming into werewolves. Yeah. And so found footage book, World War Z. It makes sense. It's a really interesting book about different documents or descriptions of video files, interviews of a zombie apocalypse. Just basic like that. Season 9, and we're going at episode 5, Dog Dean Afternoon. So Dean, in this episode, can suddenly talk to animals, in particular a dog, so Dog Dean Afternoon. And Dean as a dog character reminds me of Gaspode, the wonder dog from Discworld. So he is a talking dog who's very unassuming, kind of smelly, and he likes to hide the fact that he can communicate with humans, or that they can understand him. He's a really interesting character. I really like him. And I'm going to recommend the book that he first comes up in, and that is Moving Pictures by Terry Pratchett. And this is about Discworld gets Hollywood. They start making movies. Yeah, and it's just fun, entertaining. Discworld. It's just a fun, entertaining Discworld novel that obviously has a lot to say about society. Season 10, we're going with episode 8. This is Hibbing 911, and again, Sam and Dean aren't the main focus. Instead, we have Jody and Donna, and it's their first time meeting, and they team up to solve a crime at a police convention. And they're also about, like, getting together and, like, female empowerment. Not letting the men, like, put their stereotypes or their abuse on them. So yeah, for this book recommendation, I'd like to say Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark, because it's also a group of awesome women coming together to fight not only against oppression, male oppression, but and racism. I mean, racism doesn't feature in the episode, but racism is a feature of the book. That's what I'm trying to say there. But it's about this group of awesome women dealing with a supernatural entity. I think it would be very fitting for them. And it's a different, Ring Shout is also a different version of the kind of vintage Americana, looking back at American history. I feel that Supernatural is very much an American TV show. And I feel like this book brings an alternate version of Americana. That makes sense, hopefully. Okay, season 11, we're going with episode 15, Beyond the Mat. This is the episode with the wrestlers. Hopefully that's enough to trigger you. I love watching Dean in the wrestling ring trying to, like, live out his dream. So, the book I'm going to recommend is not about wrestlers. I don't think I've read any books about wrestlers, and I can't think of any off the top of my head. So the book I'm going for is a book that was defended on Canada Reads by a wrestler. So there's a connection there, and that wrestler is Edge. But I think it's also a book that fans of Supernatural would like, and that's called Minister Without Portfolio by Michael Winter. So this book is about a man, going out and trying to find himself. What the trigger in the book for him to do this is his girlfriend breaks up with him because he's not interesting enough. So he goes out and tries to become an interesting person. and whether that fails or succeeds is determined in the book. So I think the characters and fans of Supernatural like that, and it was defended by a wrestler, which is the link to the episode. Season 12, episode 5, The One You've Been Waiting For. So basically, Hitler is reincarnated, kind of, and Dean kills Hitler. It's the one you've been waiting for. And so I'm going to go with Making History by Stephen Fry. And this is a book about an alternative universe where a timeline is created in which Hitler never existed. So the first half of the book you're in, I think it's written in the 80s or 90s. So the first half of the book, 90s, early 2000s, I'm not entirely sure, but the first half of the book is that time period and in our current universe. And then the second half of the book is Hitler never lived. So what effect would that then have on our current timeline? It's quite an interesting book. It's been a while since I've read it, but I think I would definitely recommend it. I enjoyed it. For season 13, I'm going to go with episode 7, War of the Worlds. So Lucifer, the episodes get a lot more complicated at this point. So Lucifer gets trapped in the apocalypse world by Michael. So this other dimension gets opened and it's an alternate universe. And the apocalypse has happened there. And Lucifer gets pulled into that world and he gets trapped by Michael. And he is taunted and tortured by Michael. And it's one of the first times that we start to have sympathy for the devil. So the book I'd recommend, not the song by the Rolling Stones, but the book, is called Satan, His Psychotherapy, and Cured by the Unfortunate Dr. Kassler, JSPS. Just to let you know, JSPS stands for Just Some Poor Schmuck. I had to look that up myself. By Jeremy Levin. So this book, we have a computer that's been created by this man who dreams it up, and the computer may or may not be Satan, and he needs some psychiatric counseling. So I think it's a good book in that it creates a different view of Satan, Lucifer, than what we are told, or what we are told in Western Christian culture. And I think Supernatural does that too. So, be an interesting book. For season 14, we're almost at the end. Episode 15, I'm going to go with Peace of Mind. This was an interesting episode. It was this seemingly perfect town. Sam gets captured and everyone becomes kind of Stepford wifey. And I could recommend Stepford Wives. I've never read it, so I'm not going to recommend it, even though I have recommended books I haven't read, but I want to recommend something else. Anyways, I'm going to go with Under the Banner of Heaven. This is a nonfiction book about this seemingly perfect family, and when I think of the perfect white American family, it's probably a Mormon family, to be honest. They seem perfect, right? But they aren't. Especially the family in Under the Banner of Heaven. It's not going to be a spoiler. It's about a murder that happens in this family, this seemingly perfect family that goes real dark, kind of like the episode. It's also investigation into supernatural beliefs, and I think that would impress fans of Supernatural as well as the characters of Supernatural as well. Lastly, last season, season 15, I'm going to go with episode 14. Totally random episode. This is the Mrs. Butters episode. Last Holiday it's called. So the boys accidentally turn on this thing that brings out this wood nymph called Mrs. Butters, and she's the perfect mother, grandmother figure, and she gives the boys a sense of normalcy. They celebrate holidays, she cooks them dinners, and she helps them appreciate, the smaller things in life, to slow down. But there's also kind of this unsettling aspect to her, that there's something almost evil. I can't call her outright evil. It's the way she's programmed, right? But there's some unsettling stuff going on underneath the surface. And so for this episode, I'd recommend Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, because it is also about this woman who appreciates the smaller things in life. So it's about this woman who's working for 17 years in a convenience store, and she likes the routine and what it brings to her. But there's also kind of this kind of like unsettling thing underneath. It gets directly addressed in Supernatural. It doesn't get directly addressed in Convenience Store Women, but it is there. Yeah, so those are my book recommendations for various episodes in Supernatural. Let me know if you have any recommendation for reading material for Supernatural fans, and thank you for watching.
We got work to do.